So when we look at some of the different institutions that the Edelman Trust Barometer talks about or covers, the trust in government and media, these are not new trends necessarily, particularly when we talk about the media, we've seen declining trust numbers for decades. But I think some of that is accelerated by the misinformation that's coming via social media and that even gets distributed by the media and that also comes from government. I think there's a lot of confusion about whether or not the information that comes from these entities is credible, consistent, reliable, if it's information that we can use in our daily lives to make good decisions. So I think that's pretty significant when you look at those low numbers in those institutions. Another thing that's interesting is that business enjoys relatively high levels of trust. And when you dig into this report a little bit more, you find that that's in part because businesses have been doing a good job of communicating to employees.
So the world pretty much turned upside down in 2020, and we can see that reflected in the 2021 Edelman Trust Barometer report. At the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic, we did see a bump in trust for certain institutions, but that had mostly gone away by the end of the year. And that inequality gap we saw in 2020 between the informed public and the mass population widened even further in 2021. This may be attributed to people's belief that those with less education and income have borne the greatest burden during the pandemic. In a year when we relied so much on information from our leaders, really more than ever, the Trust Barometer survey also found that trust in those leaders continued to decline globally. Though people reported being more likely to trust their local leadership, those numbers were also down from 2020. And of all of the institutions included in the survey, communication from people's employers was once again the most immediately believable. And this may be due to the massive amounts of information that employers had to communicate to their employees during the pandemic. The upheaval of 2020 is evident in this slide, where we see what people are prioritizing as foundational problems. There's a large net change in 2021 in the importance of several COVID-related issues like healthcare, poverty, and education. And we also see a 50-point change in the importance of addressing misinformation, or fake news, as they've labeled it in the survey. As misinformation has become more of a concern, so too has people's desire to increase their own media, information, and science literacy. Now, this is a step in the right direction, I think, because individuals can do a lot to help mitigate the harmful effects of false information. But individuals cannot bear sole responsibility and will need the help of institutional leaders to improve foundational systems in order to create lasting change.
So when you look at some of the institutions that are enjoying greater trust these days, I think some of the similarities in the institutions that are enjoying greater trust, I think, have to do with the closeness to the individual. In many ways, they're institutions that impact a person's daily life, so they can actually see sort of the role that they play in their lives. And if they're doing a good job, it impacts them positively. If they're doing a bad job, it impacts them negatively. It also means that they have more choice when it comes to these institutions. So in the case of business, small businesses, you can choose to patronize because, the local pharmacy, for instance, versus some of these big box businesses that just seem to be everywhere. You can make those choices that, again, have, an impact on your daily life. So it's oftentimes, I think, with the bigger systems like the media or our federal government, for instance, there's sort of like they're perceived as these monolithic entities that we have this feeling that they're bad, but maybe we don't actually understand the inner workings so well to know whether or not they're really bad. But these smaller systems, the ones that impact us more locally, we can actually see them operating.
Gallup also updated its U.S. institutional trust poll in the summer of 2021 and found similar declines in trust from the previous year as they did in the Edelman Trust Barometer report. In this Gallup poll, small business was on the top of the list of trusted institutions, just as it was in 2020. And as I discussed previously, this may be because of the personal impact that small businesses can have on a person's daily life. Big business, on the other hand, is near the bottom, along with newspapers, the criminal justice system, television news, and Congress. I hope you found this information useful as you think about media relations, misinformation, and connecting with audiences. You can check out more information on these topics in the CHDS Media Literacy Series and other resources at the Center for Homeland Defense and Security.